রাখুন, সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন এবং আমাদের পাশে থাকুন।
So sorry for what has been achieved so far. It has been a real success story during your plus 50 years of independence, and I believe that the GSP regime also has to be proud because Bangladesh is a main beneficiary, apart from a couple of other countries from its trade benefits. But now you seem to be, as a country, moving to the next step. And I'd like to assure that we would support you in ensuring concrete progress and implementation of high standards in your social and economic life, including human rights. So, but we know very well that this interdependence of trade between the EU and Bangladesh has also led to some sad incidents. And I'm talking about Rana Plaza, which was a real shock for many of us and all of us in Europe, thinking about where our garments come from. So now this has led the European Union to engage more with Bangladesh because we really want to engage. And this has led to what we call enhanced engagement under the EBA scheme, which aims at making our trade relations sustainable. So 1 year ago, your government committed to implement what we call a labour roadmap, and we strongly welcome this major step. And we follow this with great attention because the successful implementation of the labour roadmap will be very much linked to your graduation process and the subsequent accession to the GSP Plus regime. So I wish to stress that full and successful implementation of the roadmap is a clear precondition for any accession to the GSP Plus in the future. I'd like to note with some concern delays in putting the labour law and the economic processing zone labour law in full compliance with international standards. However, I'd like to express my delight that today in our deliberations and discussions with the members of the government, we hear that there is more attention now to accelerate this implementation. So, of course, it's an important challenge for the country, and the EU has been very supportive of the process throughout. But as these are two fundamental requirements in order to successfully transition to GSP+, it will be very urgent to anticipate deadlines. So to accelerate the process for entry into force of these two important legislative changes and to ensure their full effective implementation. So I'd also like to add that the EU has a zero tolerance policy on child labour, and we attach great importance to your commitment to fully eliminate child labour by 2025. We even strongly encourage the government to speed up the process as much as possible, and we've heard some benign statements to this direction, and I very much would now appeal to the government to accelerate it so that child labour could be eradicated before 2025. I know it's a complex challenge, but it can be done if there's the political will. So, you probably know that the GSP regulation of the European Union is currently under review. And clearly, the European Parliament, as a co-legislator, attaches great importance to its implementation of conditionalities and as well as of the transparency to the process, because we believe that all the stakeholders in your society and in the EU should be involved in the implementation of the GSP regime. So I'd like to say that we have some serious concerns on human rights, and let me say that very basic international human rights conventions go together with accession to the GSP Plus regime. We believe that adequate protection of labour rights can only be guaranteed if fundamental human rights are respected. So labour rights and basic human rights cannot be separated from one another. And I also very much want to emphasize that civil society must have adequate space for free expression, and we pay great attention to concerning situations of extrajudicial detentions and enforced disappearances. So this situation at the moment is not compatible with core human rights conditions under the GSP+. So that's also why we are concerned about parts of the application of the Digital Security Act and the consequences this has in the form of a chilling effect to freedom of expression, notably in the case of journalists. And I was very pleased to hear from the Minister of Law that he has undertaken a procedure to amend the law, and I think it's up to us from the European Parliament side to make sure that the future amendment is in line with international standards. So the full implementation of labour law also requires a well-functioning and independent judiciary system. And the recent creation of labour courts is a step in the right direction. It's necessary to ensure that these are fully independent. I also want to stress that the GSP Plus requires the full implementation of the UN Anti-Corruption Convention. In addition, I want to welcome the existence of a minimum wage in Bangladesh, but it must be set at a level so as to ensure a living wage across different economic sectors. And let me point out that one of the elements in our national action, your national action plan on the labour reforms is also that the businesses must be responsible. Responsible business conduct is an element in it, and we have also been talking to the European brands, we have been talking to the manufacturers and owners of factories that this question of living wage for workers is a key issue. So I very much hope that the attention will be directed to this question. So finally, I want to say a word about the dramatic international political situation. It's very important to understand the reasons why this situation has arisen and what are the problems and the reasons of the problems. So the EU is very explicit and clear that this is not, the reasons are not the sanctions against Russia, but the unprovoked illegal aggression of Russia against Ukraine. It is this aggression of Russia against Ukraine that has led to the current problems and to the problems that the international community is being faced with. So, thank you very much for your attention, and I now give the floor to my co-rapporteur.
I mean, economic model in the past years. You are now by far more successful than you have been 10 or 20 years ago. But I guess that all of you know that this model comes to an end. So you have reached the next level. What means there are reforms in front of you. If you look back to the last years, and the success your country has reached has something to do with the Everything But Arms program of the European Union. This is a generous program which is granted only by the European Union that gives developing countries, poor developing countries, the opportunity to export with zero tariffs. But the more successful you get, we cannot give such a generous program for every time. So you will now apply for the next step, and that means there are requirements to fulfill. These are labor rights, these are human rights on the one hand. On the other hand, we have to look on the trade relations. You know that you have now a very big trade surplus with almost all European countries. And on the long run, sustainable trade means we have a balanced trade. And so we have a lot of issues to talk with your government, and at least what I can say is that the government understands that we are now in a situation of change, that your country is in a situation of change, that required reforms in Bangladesh in several areas, from labor to human rights to trade and business climate. And so the following years will be a process in which we talk about the necessary reforms and what has to be done. And at least my impression, and I hope the impression of my colleagues, is that of course we have obstacles, but we all are optimistic that we can overcome it, and that at the end, after the current success story of EBA, the even richer and more successful Bangladesh of the future can be our partner in the GSP program as well. So we will be a partner, we will discuss everything we think that should be discussed. We will also push when we think it's necessary to push. But we are here as friends and as friends who have contributed to your success and who are willing to further contribute to your future success. Thank you.
অনলাইন চ্যানেল muntiltv.com ও ইউটিউব চ্যানেলটি সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন ও পাশে থাকা বেল আইকনটি প্রেস করুন আর আপনাদের মূল্যবান মতামতগুলো কমেন্ট বক্সে জানান।